Welcome, everybody, to the Courageous Truth Podcast. As always, I am honored that you have chosen to spend a little bit of time with me today. You could be doing anything else, but here you are with me having this conversation. In this episode, it's going to be the part two of a little bit of a controversial topic. How, as a pastor, as a Bible-believing, Holy Spirit-filled Christian, can I vote for Donald Trump? This is part two. Part one, if you go back and listen, I'll talk about his character and his morality and all those different things, and how I'm approaching those type of things, how I'm approaching his character, his integrity, the sins of his past. How am I approaching those things? But in this episode, I want to get specific. Why am I voting for him? I've talked about how I can, but why am I voting for him? And I want to list 10 to 12 reasons why I am voting for Donald Trump. And I think that these are very good reasons. The first reason, and let me say this too, usually I film this in my office. I have my bookshelf in the back. I try to keep a consistent background. But because I am talking about the reasons why, and whether I am saying I'm endorsing him, but or not, I'm not. This isn't an episode to endorse Donald Trump. I'm just giving the reasons why I'm voting for him. I know that in and of itself is an endorsement. So I decided I didn't want to film it at my church. I have a great church. They understand my heart, my interest in politics and how I follow it and why I do all those things. My church is very understanding and engaged on that level. But I have told them that I would never tell them who to vote for, endorse a candidate from the pulpit. And really the church is in many ways, my office is my pulpit as well. So I didn't want to record this specific episode there, really just to honor my relationship with my church. And you know, some pastors don't have a problem with it. I just wanted to be a little bit courteous and aware of that. So that's why you see the wood grain closet doors behind me. So next episode, I'll be back at my church, filming in my office again, and you can see my messy bookshelf. But just as a reminder, the Courageous Truth Podcast exists to bring biblical clarity to the secular culture, to impart wisdom and assist with the navigation of conflicting ideologies. Our heart is to equip and empower listeners to stand for truth. Why? Because truth requires courage. I want to get into the reasons why I am voting for Donald Trump. Number one reason I am voting for Donald Trump is his America First policies. This man wants to see America succeed. He looks at America as a business, and he wants America's business and he wants America's workers to be number one. We haven't had that in a while. We haven't had this with the last administration where they were putting other nations and other people and illegal immigrants before American citizens. Donald Trump will put America first, and that's important to me. That's a main reason right there. Well, I'm going to circle in that little oval next to his name on my ballot. Number two reason, which is very, very important to me, he will be in charge, not the suits. Now it is unbelievably obvious that Joe Biden for the past 3.5 years had handlers. The guy couldn't find his way off stage. He bumbled through all his speeches. We didn't know if they were pre-recorded. Nobody had any trust in him that he was running the country. I don't believe that he was running a country. There was suits. It could have been Barack Obama. It could have been some people, probably people that we don't even know, that were running the country, that were handling Joe Biden and using his hand to write signatures and his voice to make declarations. But there was suits behind it. Donald Trump can't be controlled, and he won't be controlled. He will be the one in charge for the good and the bad and the ugly of his administration. And also the third reason is he has a track record of completing tasks. He moved the embassy, the American embassy in Jerusalem. I think, no, what did he do? He has a track record of completing tasks. We look at the wall. We look at bringing businesses back to America. His strong stance in the military. We see a lot of those things, and he was the most pro-life president. I don't appreciate so much his stance on abortions now. I talked a little bit about that before, but he was the most pro-life president, the only one who went to the March of Life and participated. And I think he even gave a speech at the March of Life. I can't remember any president, if any, ever did, go to that. He has a track record of completing tasks, doing what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to support Israel, and he did. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Number 4 reason is he cares about the nation. He really cares about America. Patriotism is at a high when he is in office. You see American flags everywhere. You see people that are patriotic. You see every time he comes out on stage, it's God bless America. He brings with him a certain patriotism, and we should be patriotic about our nation. We should love our nation. God is a God of nations. We should love our nation. Now, America's not in biblical prophecy. I do not believe that at all. However, I do believe God's hand was on its creation and formation. So I love this nation. We have unbelievable freedoms that we take so much for granted. He brings a certain patriotism back to America. The 5th reason is he's financially capable. He's a businessman and knows how to make business deals. The Art of the Deal. He wrote a book, The Art of the Deal. We are going to prosper under many of his financial and economic policies. He's not going to send money overseas because he wants to keep the money in America. That's what he wants. Now, he has to deal with Congress, he has to deal with the Senate, he has to deal with all these things. But as a person, as an administrator, as the president of the country, he wants to keep finances here in America. Number 6, and this is a huge, huge reason for me why I am voting for him, is he stands up against the woke culture. The trans ideology, the mutilation of kids is a big one. Tim Walz, he signed into law, number 1, that he's from Minnesota, that's a sanctuary city for abortions and for sex change surgeries on minors. But he even signed it that kids can get gender affirming care without their parental consent. This man is wicked. That's a woke, cancerous ideology. Okay, and Donald Trump will stand up against it. He won't put up with it. He's not going to be politically correct around it. He's not going to dance around it. He's going to say it for just what it is. Number 7, here's another huge one. This one we really have to grasp as conservatives, and especially I believe as Christians. There are 3, I believe it's 3 Supreme Court justice seats that are up this next election, and the next president will get to appoint them. Donald Trump will appoint decently conservative people. He appointed Amy Coney Barrett, I believe, right at the end of his last administration. Not everybody agrees with her, but she is at least in many ways a conservative voice. Ketanji Brown, or whatever her name was, she's a woke crazy person. She's infected with that woke ideology and wants to see that infiltrate our culture. Appointing 3 Supreme Court justices, this is huge, and we need a conservative in there to do it that we, the people, can influence. So that's a big one at number 7. Number 8 is he's not a war profiteer. He doesn't need money. I love this about Donald Trump. He doesn't need money. He doesn't even take a salary. He doesn't need the finances that comes from the political game, the political arena. Now, we sent so much money overseas. I mean, we had $100 billion spending bills, and only a portion of it went overseas. There was some insider trading, and it's proven. We know that there's money laundering going on. I mean, how stupid do they think that the American people are? Okay, we have people on these really, semi-decent Congress public servant salaries that are in huge multi-million-dollar homes. Where's their money coming from? It's not coming. It's coming from some other way, and I believe that they're making a lot of business deals. Donald Trump is not interested in that. He's not interested in war profiteering. He's not interested in money laundering. I mean, his finances are out there for the world to see. Okay, so he's probably the most accountable man in the public arena that we have out there. Number 9 goes right along with number 7, I believe, or number 6, is he cannot be bribed and he cannot be intimidated. They've been trying to intimidate him since he announced that he was running for a second term. They've been trying to intimidate him since 2015 when he beat Jeb Bush in the primaries. They've been trying to intimidate him, throw him in jail. They've been just smashing his reputation. The fake Russia collusion, the fake PP tape that Dan Bongino always calls. He will not be intimidated by any kind of threat. They can shoot at him and he will still get up, and he probably would have still kept speaking. But the Secret Service rushed him off. I mean, now they got bulletproof glass around him, but and I think they should. And Kamala Harris too. I mean, I don't want her to win, but I don't want anything bad to happen to her. I just want her to go away and keep her political agenda away from the White House. Well, it's already in the White House. Get it out of the White House and keep it out of there. But I don't want anything bad to happen to her. But we know Donald Trump has a target on his back and always has, and he always will as long as he's alive. But he cannot be intimidated. That's what a leader is. We want a courageous leader in the White House that will not be intimidated by foreign dignitaries or threats or bribes or anything like that. Number 10 is American patriotism is an all-time high. I already talked about that. So it's kind of just a continuation of that reason. But like I said before, he loves America. He loves the American flag. He loves what it is. And he even said in one of his at one of his rallies that he would request, and I don't know if this is a president can even do this, but request a year in prison for anyone who burns a flag. And I remember as a kid that you don't let a flag, my dad taught me, you don't let the American flag touch the ground. Why? Because the American flag is sacred. The American flag means something. It means my dad was a Vietnam veteran. He is a Vietnam veteran. The flag means that there are men who died to keep that flag blowing in the wind, to give us that, to make sure that that flag still means freedom. It still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away, as the song goes. That kind of patriotism. Now, is that too extreme? I'm not sure. I used to think as a kid that if you burned the flag, you did go to jail. That's what I thought, because there was so much honor towards our men and women that have died for our nation and died in wars, and whether the war was just or not, they gave their life. Okay, they gave their life for it, and I think that flag honors our veterans, past and present. So I love the patriotism, and then of course the next one, number 11. So this will be about 10. A couple of them kind of are similar, but he's a president of law and order. Crime is out of control. Just where I live out here by the by Mount Rainier in the Pacific Northwest, in a little tiny town called Graham, and there was a student on their way to school that got shot. I believe a 15-year-old kid got shot walking on the way to high school. There was another woman who got carjacked. She got murdered, and her dog got murdered. Crime is on the rise. Why? Because democratic policies are not effective. Democratic policies, they enable criminals and they enable crime. We have got to get rid of these democratic policies because it is destroying our streets and our communities. He is the president of law and order. And then he's, and this isn't really another reason, but he does want to get rid of the federal income tax and start putting heavier tariffs on other countries that are doing business with us. So instead of taxing the American people, he wants to tax people that are tax nations and organizations that are bringing their products to America or bringing their produce to America or whatever. So if they want to do business in America, it's going to cost them a little bit more, and it's going to cost us a little bit less. That's what I like about that. He's not interested in taking our money so he can look good in front of the world. Okay. He's interested in protecting American people and making America the superpower economically. And he cares about the dollar. We're seeing a definite drop in the value of the dollar. And that's part of inflation too. Part of inflation is the dollar isn't as valuable as it used to be. We say it's because of all these different reasons that now it costs more dollars. The dollar just isn't worth anything. It's just not worth anymore. When I was a kid, I could buy candy bars for a dime. Now you have a dollar, you can't even go to the dollar store and buy anything. All right. So those are some reasons those are reasons why I am voting for Donald Trump. I want to see the left defeated. I want to see these evil people get out of power. There is a little bit of vengeance in it. For the last 4 years, we had this Biden-Harris administration that they were absolutely verbally abusive to conservatives. They were abusive to anybody who would support Donald Trump and his policies. They called them mega Republicans. They made it a derogatory term that if you support this man and his policies and his political agenda, then you're the threat to society. You're the threat to democracy. You don't want to get the vaccine, then this is your fault, this pandemic. And they were just so derogatory to us, and we didn't feel like we have a voice. And I believe that Donald Trump can be that voice for conservatives who have been wounded. I was just talking to one of the gubernatorial candidates here in Washington, and I said, "Hey, bro, your conservative base has been wounded because we've been verbally abused through the media by the governor that is sitting in power right now." The way he's talked about parents going to school boards, the way he's talked about conservatives that are dissidents against his horrible democratic policies. Being a dissident is part of the political process. Being a dissident actually puts pressure on them to listen to those who are dissident. Like, it's almost like a responsibility for us to push back against the political agendas that we don't agree with, or that we think are damaging to our lives and our children. That's our responsibility. We have a responsibility to do that. And guess what? When Donald Trump gets into office and he does something that we don't like, we have a responsibility to call him out on it and call our state reps and push back against him. That's part of the deal. He's there to serve us. We're not electing God. We're not electing a moral leader. We're not electing a priest or a pastor. What we are doing is we are electing someone who is going to represent us and be our voice to the world, and to be our voice to the different states and into the political process, and really help to build good, wholesome values and common sense back into our nation. Okay, I don't see how you can be a Christian and look at God and look at your Bible and vote for the evil democratic policies. Okay, the Democrats say they're for helping the poor, but yet they do nothing but destroy the poor and make poorer people poorer and make the poorer, lower class community grow because their policies are so terrible. Their policies do not help the homeless community. It just adds to them and enables them. They want to give clean first aid kits and drug kits to drug addicts instead of creating some kind of opportunity for them to get clean. Okay, their policies are demonic and destructive. When you have a political agenda that one of your biggest pushes is the murder of babies, and at the DNC they had I don't know if it was surgical abortion, but I know they did have the abortion pill available to them outside of the DNC clinic. What does that tell you? That tells you that is a demonic organization. How can you vote for that? How can you vote for a organization and a party that pushes the trans agenda and the abuse and mutilation of children? I believe it's an emotional and violent assault, the transgender. They push this DEI, which just in DEI, in so many ways, it's just this Marxist ideology that destroys everything pure so they can rebuild it in a way that they say is pure. And it's terrible. I read an article today. It's actually an article from 2015 that said reading. It was an article where a professor at some school, I can't remember his name. Maybe I'll put a link in the descriptions. But he said reading bedtime stories to your kids actually disadvantages kids who don't get bedtime stories read to them. In other words, because you're doing that thing that's wholesome, you're actually degrading people around you that don't have that opportunity. How evil and terrible is that? Okay, I'm sorry that kid doesn't get a bedtime story, but through a series of choices, he ended up alone going to bed. If people took more responsibility for their children and cared for them as much as they could, because of the morality of our nation, the sexual morality of our nation is everybody's having sex with everybody. So we're having kids with no parents and no homes. That's the real issue. The issue isn't some kids are getting bedtime stories and some kids aren't. The problem is our nation has been granted permission by bureaucrats and the Department of Education and by Hollywood that they can be as promiscuous and immoral as they want without any consequences. And I'm all that to say, as a pastor, as a Christian, as a Bible-believing, Holy Spirit-filled Christian, I believe that God can use Donald Trump to turn our nation back to God, as immoral as he is. God used Noah, God used Jonah, God used Samson, God used Samuel, the list goes on and on. The only one who was perfect was Jesus. Okay. God used Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times, who was a coward. God used him. God uses any willing vessel. And I believe that Donald Trump, through his ego, and he is ego, and he does have an ego, through his ego can be used by God to help turn the spirit of our nation back to God. I believe God can use him to do that. And that's why I am voting for him. So God bless you. Thank you for tuning into these 2 episodes. I'll be back filming in my office next week. I pray that you continue to take a courageous stand for the truth, even if it means putting your reputation on the line, because the truth requires courage. Make sure you get out and vote. Vote in your local county elections. Vote in the federal election. Vote early, especially if you're in a mail-in state, and then track your ballot online. Let's get these ballots in. Let's turn our nation. If you're in Washington State, vote for Dave Reichert for governor. We've got to flip our state. We cannot let Bob Ferguson do it. We haven't had a Republican governor in 40 years. Now is the time, and we can do that if everyone gets out and votes. So God bless you. Continue to take a courageous stand for the truth, and I will see you next time.